Well, that didn't help. Just as I tell you, I never have any issues. It's being fickle.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Allie Peters over here in our Scottsdale office. We're so excited that Carolyn decided to give us her time this morning. Thank you so much. She is going to talk a little bit about the long-term care conversation, but also she will touch on some upcoming changes. So I know a couple people have asked questions. She is the lady to answer those for you. And one other just housekeeping item, if you have questions during the presentation, please just type them into your chat box, and I will make sure I get to those as soon as she is done with her presentation. So we'll save those questions for the end. And Carolyn, I'm going to send it over to you. Thank you so much.
Great. Good morning. Thank you all for joining this morning. We're going to spend about the next 40 minutes or so going through making long-term care planning part of your conversation, part of your client's retirement plans. I'm going to give you some really simple turnkey psychology and language around how to prevent long-term care, how to incorporate it into your process so that it's just systematic and it's not oh, by the way, we haven't discussed this yet. Really, if you take some of the principles that I go through, the whys behind it, some of the simple language, and how people are thinking and feeling when you bring up long-term care, or maybe they've had a personal experience, I think you'll see the comprehensive wealth plans that you're putting together for your clients really becomes complete. Prior to Lincoln, I was with another carrier that is also an asset-based carrier, asset-based long-term care planning carrier. But prior to that, I was a producer and did risk management advising for about 15 wealth advisors. With that, I would go through people's plans. So looking for life insurance gaps, and if there's income gaps, disability gaps, long-term care, 95% of the plans that we had under management, which was about $2.5 billion, 95% of the plans for clients over the age of 55 did not have a long-term care plan. And so my responsibility was to sit down and go through all of their insurance. And with that, I put together a system that really identified an honest conversation about they had a worry, concern about being a burden to their kids. Their funding source was to self-insure. We're going to go through some of the top objections and how to overcome them. But really, long-term care, I think, for advisors for many, many years has been a scary conversation as well. So we're going to go through what y'all may be thinking, agents, advisors, and what your clients are thinking, how they're going to respond. We'll talk about the growing need for planning, how you frame the conversation, and then incorporating it within your practice. So generally, I think advisors have had hesitation on bringing up long-term care. Agents, if you're an annuity producer, if you're a life insurance predominant producer, if you're a comprehensive wealth planner, long-term care is one of those discussions that I think advisors are concerned about damaging the relationship. Maybe they don't want to know the health information behind the client. I've had plenty of advisors tell me they are stocks and bonds only. Really, it comes down to two basic questions. If you write anything down, write these two questions down. What is your plan if you had an extended healthcare event, and how are you going to fund it? So I'll repeat those again later on in the presentation, but really keeping it high level and generic is going to take kind of that fear factor of not being a long-term care expert. Core Group is it's my largest account. They are fantastic about helping their clients, put together the right solution for a client. While I would love to compete when it comes to MoneyGuard, I believe in the solution. I think that clients are really leaning towards the hybrid opportunities. It's about having a well-documented plan that your clients can lean on and know that you've allocated funds to be able to pay for an extended healthcare event. So what clients are thinking, 14% have talked with an advisor about how they would pay for care. 13% have talked with an advisor about who would provide care. I just want to take it back to, this is not an insurance discussion per se. It really is a planning discussion for the family. Long-term care planning is about taking care of the people who are going to take care of your client. You know, it's about putting the tools and resources together and having a well-documented plan of where the funding source is going to be, where mom or dad is going to live, who is going to be that primary caregiver, and just really having a turnkey part of their plan, communication between multi-generations, you know, the children that may be taking care of them or friends, family. And just when it happens, it's not chaos. At a minimum, it's going to be organized chaos, but you're going to serve them well. You're going to deepen your relationships with your clients by bringing it up. So advisors are the go-to resource for long-term care planning. 9 out of 10 Americans believe that their financial advisors should be discussing long-term care plans with their clients. Again, insurance is a solution. It's not necessarily the end-all be-all. And many clients are going to choose to self-insure, quote unquote. I call it self-funding. But I wanted to share some statistics. They're not in this presentation, but I'll send them out to Allie afterwards about wealthy clients, because I think this is one of the biggest downfalls when it comes to many advisors think, well, I can manage the money to be able to pay for the care. You know, in addition to tax burdens that you might have to pay out before you can pull that funding source, and or that money is supposed to be their lifetime income. I think that many advisors often say, well, my clients can self-insure. Really, they're not self-insuring, they're self-funding. So they're going to pull money out of their accounts and their resources based on where the market is, based on where the real estate industry is. They're going to pay taxes on the amount of funds that are coming out. So thinking about the funding source and using the assets under management or any other financial planning that you've done, really when it comes to long-term care planning, you're figuring out a way for them to self-insure better or self-fund better, providing them that leverage. The survey and the statistics that I'll send out that aren't in this wealthy client. So the objection I get from advisors is most of my clients can self-insure or afford to pay for it themselves. 32% of clients over $5 million to $500 million in assets, 32% have a long-term care insurance plan. I found that number to be staggering, especially when the number of consumers in general is only about 15 to 16% that have a long-term care insurance contract in place. So 32%, 28% between $100,000 and $1 million in assets under management have a long-term care plan in place. It was 20, I think I might get this wrong. Clients under the age of 42 who are of the uber affluent, very wealthy, there was a very significant proportion of clients under the age of 42 who said that they will put a long-term care insurance contract in place. So I'll send you those stats so you can look over them and read the study. But my point here is don't eliminate anybody in your book of business and make that or predetermine that they're able to pay for it themselves. You know, have this conversation as part of your practice. That's going to be the end of the presentation on how to incorporate it, but really it's a conversation to bring up with everyone. I commonly get asked, at what age should we start doing planning? My standard answer is start planting the seeds with every client or seed with every client at 40 and on. You know, you may want to start bringing it up at 35, whatever your preference. But the reason for this is not just the health, that their health is in place. You know, you don't know what kind of medical issues are going to surface down the road. But beyond that, 40-year-olds have 65 and 70-year-old parents that may not have had the conversation about what their extended health care plan is. So bringing it up with your 40-year-olds, asking them, you know, is there a chance they might have to be a caregiver to a parent or a loved one in the future? And just planting the seed, you know, by the time maybe they're ready to move forward, their kids are out of college, out of the house, they've got some money coming in, incomes increase. You've planted the seed enough times that it's just part of the overall conversation for wealth planning. Why clients need a plan? 98% feel more confident about their financial future. 96% have peace of mind. Again, I like to look at this as anti-nursing home planning. I've only sat down with one couple out of Kansas in the last 22 years who the gentleman told me his plan was to go into a nursing home. He was kind of inappropriate. He said his plan was to go into a nursing home when he needed care because the male to female ratio was much greater. They were a humorous couple and definitely poked at each other, but really what he was saying is that he didn't want to put that kind of pressure or burden on his wife. You know, he wanted to make sure she was a tiny little woman. He was not a tiny man. He knew that there was no way in their older years that they could physically take, or she could physically take care of him. So putting a plan in place that covered all levels of care was important to them. But truthfully, a solid long-term care plan is going to cover care wherever they are. So I look at it as coverage that's going to help them age well in place. Who, when, how. Rule of thumb, this is Lincoln's rule of thumb. My rule of thumb is 40. Just making it part of your overall annual reviews, periodic reviews, when you're onboarding a client, bringing in that AUM, making it the second, third step in your process. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. 95% of advisors believe long-term care should be part of the retirement plan, and unfortunately, not that many are bringing it up. 94% of advisors agree that clients wait too long. 90% believe that advisors should be discussing long-term care. You know, we had I call it the Y2K of 2016 with the DOL, and you know, there was a lot of push for making sure we're doing comprehensive planning and that everything is documented. DOL is gone for the moment. Who knows if it's going to come back? I think we'll see it in some form or fashion. But this is an area when you're doing planning with clients that you can't afford to leave untapped, undiscussed. You can't leave it uncovered. So from a legal liability standpoint for yourself, having children 20, 25, 30 years down the road, so you did all of the planning for mom and dad, yet you failed to have a discussion with them on long-term care planning, leads to a very litigious environment. What topics are being discussed? So 59% savings for retirement, 42% asset allocation, 27% estate planning. Obviously, the biggest concern for clients is running out of money, making sure that their income's going to last as long as they live, tax consequences, and then 26%, only 26% of agents and advisors are discussing long-term care planning. So I encourage you, again, you don't have to be an expert, but just getting some basic fundamental language of how to present for the funding options, whether they're going to self-fund or you're going to put it into an insurance contract. The reality is 100% of the client's portfolio is at risk if they do not have a plan in place. So right now, they do have a plan, and the plan is to 100% self-insure or self-fund. You know, asking clients, do they think they could carve a couple $1 million out of pocket down the road and still not run out of money? Most clients are not comfortable carving that kind of funding out of their own fund, out of their own resources. So clients, how do clients feel about discussing long-term care with an advisor? You know, there's bulletproof Superman heroes, Superwoman heroes out there, bionic women that think this is just never going to happen to them. Their tune will change, I promise. And that's where just revisiting it, even if you've had the discussion once, that doesn't mean that they were ready. Having a checklist of all the things that you need to review, whether it's beneficiaries, account beneficiaries, making sure that you're checking the box for yourself. And we're going to go over a few tools at the end that you can use in your appointments that will help identify those assets. So 15%, not too valuable. Large majority of clients think that this is valuable. Be the first to have the conversation with them. I know that you may not be an insurance specialist. You may just really focus on making sure your client's wealth is intact. The investments are great. If you're not having the discussion with clients, somebody else will. So if you're wanting to maintain and keep your client retention up, please make sure that you're incorporating this. 70% of all widows leave their financial advisor within 1 year of their spouse passing. And that, I believe it was a Forbes article, I'd have to dig back, but the statistic says the depth of the relationship, the reason that a lot of widows leave their advisor is because the husband had the relationship with the advisor. So this is a way to pull in the ladies in the relationship. single ladies, yes, I think it's Beyonce just came to mind, widows, same-sex couples. I mean, there's huge target markets for you to increase the AUM that you are managing and deepen those relationships so that they stay on board. The other side of it is if you've been an advisor, say, for 15, 20 years and you have another 15, 20 years in front of you, if you have clients calling in monthly asking for $10,000, $12,000, $15,000 a month for 5, 6, 7 years, your AUM isn't protected either. So this is a way to take a small portion of the books of business that you're managing, reposition it to create a much bigger, better, tax-efficient bucket of money. 20% found it very valuable. So with this, why is the topic of long-term care overlooked, depressing, low priority, not sure my clients want it or need it, outside the scope of what I do, too difficult, too time-consuming? All these things can be true. Reality is perception. But my goal today is to give you some language that makes things very simple. Again, turnkey, easy, non-threatening. You're not talking about nursing homes and changing parents' diapers. It's just about making sure the plan is solid. Here's the real risk. It won't happen to me. I talked about the Superman, superhero conversation. If you're sitting next to somebody and I say 1 out of 2 of you is going to need long-term care, human nature says we're going to point our finger at somebody else. We have a hard time believing. Only 33% of Americans think that they're going to need care. 40% think their spouse will. 50% assume their parents will. The reality is 7 out of 10 of us are going to need some kind of long-term care services in our lifetime. Common objections: the government's going to take care of me. That's what I've been saving for. My family is going to take care of me. These are 3 of the most common objections that I get from clients. So they typically don't say Medicare and Medicaid cover me. They'll say I'm going to pay for it out of pocket. I have enough money. My kids are going to take care of me. So again, these are the most common objections. Your only answer here is absolutely, no matter what they say. So if they say that the government's going to take care of me, absolutely. Let me show you what you have to do to qualify. Medicare doesn't cover long-term care services. Medicaid, or it's very limited, I should say. So Medicare will cover up to 100 days. The first 20 days are at 100%. Then you have to go into a skilled nursing facility or have home health care services that they've received a waiver to receive. After 100 days, there's nothing paid by Medicare. So the deductible right now, is a couple $100. Medigap is going to pay for that, but Medicare is designed to be health insurance. Medicaid is a great program. So when you say absolutely, you would say Medicaid is a great program for those who absolutely need it. Let me show you the spend down rules. So your state is going to have specific spend down rules that you can pull up on a Google search and just show them, in Texas, you've got to spend down to $2,000. Cash value goes, IRAs go, pension, income goes. You get to maintain a monthly amount of about $60 a month for personal income. Cash value, I think I said that, life insurance, annuity, income, everything is diverted to pay for care before the government's going to kick in. Most clients are not saving and working with a financial advisor only to spend down so that Medicaid can take care of them. Medicaid's only going to pay for a skilled nursing facilities in most situations. I have heard of some situations recently where there's been approved home health care. I think the government's realizing it's cheaper to have home health care, but Medicaid is not something that affluent, high net worth, even middle class clients are planning for. They're planning for living a long, healthy retirement. So absolutely, let me show you what you have to do to qualify. That's what my savings are for. Absolutely. Let's look at your portfolio and figure out how we're going to fund it and make sure it's the most tax efficient way that we could provide these resources and benefits. I'm going to go through the asset identifier shortly in just a few minutes and show you how to use it to close. And then my family will take care of me. Now, always say absolutely here. I wouldn't insult them by saying, I know your kids and I don't think they're really going to do what you think they're going to do. Absolutely. Which child? Have you communicated this to them? How would it impact their life? Most of us, if you're a parent, we don't get up in the morning to shuffle our kids out to school without shoes or a backpack. We make sure We're giving them all the tools and resources possible to be able to have a successful life, for them to have happiness. And, you know, caregiving for another person, it's a full-time job. So if you've been a parent, you know what it's like to take care of a 4-month-old and not get any sleep. Imagine being a grown adult taking care of your children, and now all of a sudden you're taking care of mom and dad. It stops and reshapes the way you're living life. Proximity. A lot of times parents live away from their, you know, we don't all live in the same city typically now. So how are they going to be able to take care of mom or dad if something were to happen? Really talking about long-term care planning, again, it's about loving the people who are going to take care of you. It's about giving them the tools and resources to be able to manage their care versus provide their care. All right, the growing need. Why do they need to plan? So last years of retirement are the riskiest. If you factor in, and if you're using a comprehensive wealth planning tool such like eMoney, MoneyGuard Pro, you can factor in a 4-6 year projected future incident and show them how it impacts their score. Agents, if you're doing the insurance planning side of it, a lot of times you'll do the work and then they'll say, I need to call my financial advisor to see if I can pull the money out to pay for this. You know, one way to head this off is do a full insurance review. Look at the tax value life insurance, see if that can be 1035 exchange, old annuities that might be sitting out there down at the bank, look for CDs, money markets. You know, so really making sure that you're doing a comprehensive insurance review, regardless if you're an insurance agent or you're a financial advisor, needs to be the first step for figuring out the funding source. If you have a long-term care event, you know, we're told take less than 5% off our portfolios, with the interest rates being what they've been, potential market correction, you know, 5% is still a little bit high. Prudence advisors will recommend 2, 3, 4%. If you have a long-term care event, it's not predictable. You don't know how long it's going to last. You don't know when the money is going to come out. You don't know if you're going to have any time to recover from it. You have no idea how long your partner or spouse is going to live beyond you needing care. So the average withdrawal rate would be about 13% if you have an unprotected long-term care event. Cost of care is underestimated. It is creeping up. Coast to coast is going to be more expensive. We're looking at $12,000, $13,000, $14,000 a month if you're on the East Coast, kind of the same numbers if you're on the West Coast. In Texas, where I live, we're in a little bit of a bubble. But when I started this journey in long-term care planning, we were looking at, you know, $40,000, $50,000 a year. We're up to $80,000, $84,000 a year for a skilled care or nursing home facility. The average cost for home health care, 8 hours, 40 hours a week, which means that they need I would say if they need home health care more than 40 hours a week, and I've seen some clients fund up to 24 hours, multiple providers, they could be spending anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000 a month. Very wealthy client that I wrote a case on recently is a $418,000 premium combined for him and his wife. They're worth $50 million. He is actually in the process of building a Mediterranean adult continuing care community down in Florida. In all respects, and from the advisor's perspective, this gentleman could self-insure. And when we sat down to go through the different options, I just asked him, you know, why are you looking at this? And he said he took care of his mom for 6 years in his home, round-the-clock care, had 3 or 4 providers coming in depending on what they needed to do. He said he wouldn't have traded last years with his mother for anything. He was spending close to $150,000 annually over the 6-year period of time. Even a man with $50 million that could obviously cover that $750,000 expense with much greater ease than the average American. He said the burden was he was still having to coordinate care. He was still having to write the checks to the different providers. You know, there was a lot of administrative work that he said, I truthfully don't have time to do it. He was looking specifically at the care coordination benefits that we had through Silver Brick Road and the client concierge program. He wanted to shift that risk into somebody else's hands. And he said, I'm taking a fraction of my net worth and repositioning it to create a bucket of money that's growing consistently by 5%. He said, you know, I'm 70 years old. He's like, there's nowhere else I could take this money and invest it and have the same return on investment. So he looked at it as an investment. And that's where I think we need to be really careful with the word insurance. Insurance is a dirty word to most clients. We need to be talking about any form of insurance is an income stream. It's an income stream to replace the other resources that are going to be used if they don't have a plan in place. So perceived cost right now is about $75,000 national average. Roughly only 75% of the average annual cost for a private nursing home. The reality is we're closer to $100,000 a year on average for the U.S. Long-term care doesn't affect the individual, as I've mentioned. This is about the unintended consequences to the family and friends. I mean, really dig deep. So when you're talking to gentlemen from the psychological standpoint, talk to them about being providers and protectors. They've been great dads, great husbands. They've gone to work every day to provide for their family. Why would they leave one shortfall in their overall portfolio that could devastate and impact their loved ones greater than any other risk? So instead of talking about you might need care someday, turn it to you've been great at financial planning. You've been great and consistent at saving and making sure your wife, your husband, whatever, had a roof over their heads and food on the table and that you had money for the future. This is the one thing that could devastate it. It's going to open them up and allow them to be providers and protectors and think about it more as a giving something or providing for their family. Ladies, we have caregiving roots. You know, we understand what it is to take care of people. The average caregiver right now in the United States is a 49-year-old woman who is working and has children. So think about, you know, I'm right in that segment of generations where it would change my life dramatically. I wouldn't be able to travel. I wouldn't be able to go to my kids' games or be mom taxi the way I am now. So really thinking about, as a caregiver, how it's going to impact you. Very often men will say to me, she's my long-term care plan. She absolutely is. If there's no other plan in place, she's going to do her very best. As a great husband, let's give her the tools and resources to be able to love you during that situation versus physically provide for you. 60% of advisors say they see families devastated by the cost of long-term care. Talk to other advisors and agents. If you haven't had a situation in your book of business or with a personal family member, talk to them about the emotional, physical devastation that happens by not having the extra resources in place. Most clients don't want to be a burden to their family. This is consistent. You'll get jokers. You'll have the gentleman who says, you know, suicide's an option. My kids are going to take care of me. Again, you go back to the objection, the way to overcome every objection. Absolutely. You're validating whatever plan they have in place. Let's talk about what that really looks like. Why clients need to plan for care. You know, we all understand we're stretched for time. We're busy. We have emails coming in left and right. We've got text messages and kids and work requirements. You know, we all are stretched very thin. So it's not just the financial aspect. People, it's emotionally devastating to see somebody that you love decline or lose their minds, you know, from Alzheimer's or dementia. You're losing a parent. They don't know who you are. You know, is that something that you want to do, 12 to 24 hours a day is care for that individual? Physically, at 80 years old, do I think I'm going to be able to move my husband from left to right? I couldn't do it today. Time again. So just talk to them more from the psychological standpoint. For the analyticals, the engineers, the doctors, show them how it devastates their score when you're using a planning software. The actual burden based on caregivers' perception. So perceived burden if loved ones need to provide care, this is what they think it is. Actual burdens based on what the caregivers are feeling, so people that are in the situation. Not so much physical, it is the emotional teardown, the stretch for time, getting back and forth and still managing their home. Talking about this as a family planning, I think, is really where we need to go. So initiating the conversation, what's your plan? How are you going to fund it? If you are onboarding a client, you're gathering assets, or you're an agent, I definitely think that it's important for you to do a full insurance review, full beneficiary review. A lot of times people lose a loved one and beneficiaries haven't been updated in years. I lost my dad a little over 2 years ago, and the first 3 months after losing him, I don't know that I actually grieved because I was trying to figure out where everything was. what was aligned. I mean, it was a very stressful time for me. So do them a favor and be involved in making sure every account is up to date. If there's been a second marriage, they may still have their ex-wife or ex-husband on their policies or their accounts. You know, make it part of your overall process. Start it earlier in retirement. Make it part of the retirement planning conversation. Again, going back to age 40, and encourage your clients. Give them some tools and resources to take home and really have the discussion with their family, with their children. It doesn't have to be a one-call close. I mean, just, you know, making sure that they know this is something that they're going to look at. They may say, hey, let's do it now. So the conversation framework, I've given you some of this. This is going to be quick and high level. How are you going to pay for long-term care or extended healthcare services? Where do you want to receive care? What are your care preferences? Plans for your assets. Do they want to leave a legacy? You know, if they're allocating the money that they're planning to use for care to go to their children and to take care of them, that's at a conflict. And ask them, do they know the cost of care? You can go to our cost of care survey under Silver Brick Road. I'll include that when I send it out to Allie. Look in your local area so you know what you're planning for. If they'd rather self-fund, not self-insure, insurance implies leverage. Which assets do they want to sell? If they need care, what is their family prepared to do? Have they had that conversation? Will their loved ones help pay for the care or provide care? And are they aware? So we've gone through most of those. The cost of care is whatcarecosts.com/Lincoln, and you put in Lincoln without the period as your sponsor code. Their thoughts about caregiving. Have they been a caregiver? A large majority of the plans that are put in place are written on people who have provided care to others or love somebody who's been a caregiver. So ask if anything's changed in the last 12 months since you've seen them, whether it's they're taking care of a grandparent or a parent. That's an introduction into generational wealth. You know, if my advisor said, hey, has your mom had a plan or a discussion about extended health care planning? Who's going to take care of her? How would this impact your retirement? My mother does have a plan, but it would absolutely be something that I would be interested in discussing and bringing her into the fold. Health-related risk. The older we are, the more likely it is we're going to have some kind of medical issues come up or disability that will cause us to be able to not get care, coverage, and that then puts us in a situation that self-funding is the only option. Legal matters. There are 32 states now that have recovery when it comes to Medicaid. So if there is an estate left or assets that were received maybe by a person, an inheritance after they were on Medicaid, or there's a spouse remaining at home while the other spouse goes into a skilled nursing facility, when that spouse passes away or needs care, goes into a skilled nursing facility as well, the house then is states have gone into recovery mode where they're going after the bills, the medical bills, and the care bills incurred by the individual. They're going after the estate. There are 2 states, South Dakota, I think, is one, and Pennsylvania is the other, recently that had litigation where the children received benefits from term policy, whatever it was, and didn't pay for the expenses incurred by the parent. They just took the inheritance. They were sued by the facility. The one situation in Pennsylvania, the oldest brother, who was the executor of the estate, was found responsible for about $82,000 in outstanding expenses. So there is legal precedent to recover the expenses that are incurred for an individual on the personal level as well as the state and federal level. Implementing into your practice. So I want to honor your time and make sure that we finish up this portion in about 6 minutes and then take questions and answers, but really creating a process in place. I have an advisor here in Fort Worth that I work, he's very systematic and process oriented, and he wanted a step-by-step turnkey process that he could walk every single client through, whether they were existing or onboarding. And so the 4th step in his process, before he put together a wealth plan, he did not put the final plan together for the clients until he had all of the insurance gathered. So property and casualty, disability, annuities, life insurance that might be sitting out there, all of the insurance. He scanned everything in, created a client folder. He would then have a staff member who he had licensed review the disability. Maybe they were 62, 63, weren't going to need disability in a couple years. They could reposition those assets to pay for a long-term care contract. She would look for income riders on annuities. It would uncover assets under management that maybe is under management down at the local bank that he wouldn't have known about otherwise. So doing a comprehensive insurance review, looking for funding sources, is going to help reposition dollars that are going out. Maybe you can make changes to an automobile policy or property and casualty, increase the deductible to save some premiums that you can then put into a long-term care plan. So 1 in 5 advisors say their clients have sufficient assets to self-insure. 89% agree these clients would benefit from the leverage. There's no other vehicle that you can take pennies and make dollars on a tax-free basis for a long-term care event. Hybrid contracts have become very popular recently. That's the asset-based long-term care contracts. I love them because they overcome all the objections. You know, if the client's not going to need them, it goes back tax-free to the beneficiary as a death benefit. It is available for long-term care. It's going to give them 3, 4, 5, 10 times what they put into it. I always like inflation protection under 72 or older. I'm not going to go into product design today, but when you give the clients the guarantees of an asset-based solution versus the pay-as-you-go approach, most clients are willing to take a look and willing to pay the few extra dollars to know that they're going to get their money back one way or another. It also kind of overcomes that quiet objection of, I really don't think I'm going to need it. You're able to look at the client and say, I don't have a crystal ball. I have no idea if you're going to need it. This money is going to go back to your estate in some form or fashion. Other triggers. So talk to them about your personal experience or personal experiences of your clients. Other triggers that prompt clients to have the conversation, turning a certain age, their neighbors are doing it. They can now afford it. Maybe their kids are out of college. Just bringing it up again as just part of your overall annual review is what I would recommend is your number one priority to making sure you've covered all your bases. Find new opportunities, marketing campaigns. I do a lot of client seminars. I've even done some client webinars for advisors that cover and agents that cover clients all over the country, just educating them about what long-term care planning is and educating them on the different kinds of ways to fund it. Multi-generational planning opportunities I touched on, and then markets you can look at. Women, single individuals, LGBT market tends to have a lot of money and not all of the couples have children. People have been caregivers, spouses with an age difference of 10 or more. I don't think it really matters who your client is. I think it's a conversation that needs to happen and happen periodically afterwards. But I do think that women, we tend to get it. It's a way into business owners. So really just stopping and making a list of some target markets for you, some marketing initiatives, and then reach out to Cora or myself, and we can help put those together. So Lincoln, I'm going to send out the conversation workbook. We're not going to go through the research methods. I want to touch on a few pieces that can help you with the process in your office. So the first one, let's go to the asset identifier. So the asset identifier is a new tool that Lincoln has out. I've seen a couple of our competitors come out with one after us, but this is a great way to put in the cost of home health care, assisted living, private nursing home in your territory, and then the source that they're going to use to pay for care. I like to use this as a Columbo or oh, by the way close. I have some of my counterparts who like to start the conversation with this. I use it at the end because I want to hear every objection the client has and what their plan is before we're allocating their personal resources. So when I ask the question, what's your plan? How are you going to fund it? I'm quiet. I don't say anything. I let them sit there and look at each other or say, I don't know, I haven't thought about it, or give you all of the objections under the sun. I'm bulletproof. I'm never going to die or need care. And then absolutely, if self-insuring or self-funding is what they're choosing to do, this is where I pull out the asset identifier and just say, as your agent, advisor, your fiduciary, I have a responsibility to have a well-documented plan. If you're going to self-insure, I'm completely comfortable with that. I just want to know what assets that you're going to reallocate to pay for care. Get the account name, account type. This might gather additional assets for you to bring in. Do a review of these contracts to see if maybe there's a way to leverage these better. Do a 1035 exchange. The client signs, you sign, copy it, you give them a copy. A copy goes in your file. The reason I love this is that, insurance, the reason it's a hard sell is it's not tangible. They get a policy, but they don't really know what the long-term care or the long-term impact or benefit is going to be until they're on claim or needing care or pass away. But when they start to look at their personal assets that they've worked hard for, saved, invested, overcome market crashes, and now they're having to carve some of that out to create this bucket of money for care, a lot of clients are going to say, you know what, let's go ahead and look at this again. So I like to use it as a final closer. You can personalize it with your information, date, etc. The other piece that I like to use or have is the Medicare application part 2 and the supplement. And the reason for these is that you don't even have to fill them out. Just have them read over them, or when you book the appointment, if you're comfortable with the client, you've worked with them for years, go ahead and shoot these over. Or if you've got a health questionnaire, CORE has a health questionnaire, shoot those over when you book the appointment and ask them to send them back to you. Pre-screen. Lincoln MoneyGuard, great company, been around for 31 years, 40 times larger than the next key competitor. That being said, it might not be the right fit for them. This will allow you to pre-screen with a different carrier so you can set expectations when the clients are in. So I like to use the part 2 and the questionnaire. If the clients send them back to you, that means that they're committed to this conversation. The last piece is the PHI, so the personal history interview. So they say, yes, we're ready to move forward. Send this home with them and tell them your call could be 30 minutes or it could be an hour, depending on the prep work you do for the phone interview. Lincoln is accept or decline. We don't order medical records unless the client or the account challenges what our decision was. So it's accept or decline. We don't rate for smoking, but this is going to let them gather all their medications, put the information together that's going to be asked on the health interview, and make the process much easier. We do cognitive interviews for those that are 61 and older. Make sure you prep your clients for it. Let them know they're not picking on them. They're going to ask them questions that seem ridiculous. Turn off their email. Grandkids get put away. Dogs get put away. Spouse gets put in the other room. Really focus on the questions. You don't want to fail it. It's not I have to make a 100% cognitive interview. They're looking for how the client is answering the questions. So Alzheimer's, dementia, there's over the age of 85, there's a 50% risk that ladies are going to have Alzheimer's or dementia. So just make sure that they take this very seriously. I've had CEOs, CFOs fail it because they were multitasking. Multitasking is a lie. All right, so with that, really it's high-level process. It's keeping it simple with your clients. The mechanics of the process, you can get in the weeds going into how it works. MoneyGuard, the story is simple. We're going to take $100,000, reposition it from the left pocket to the right pocket, create a much bigger bucket of money that's going to come out tax efficient. If you die and don't use it, your death benefit's going to go back tax-free. There are return of premium features. It's a very easy conversation to become an expert on. We have a 0-day elimination period. I don't like to go into the weeds on every facet and feature that's inside the contract. The principle is to cover the risk and create a tax-efficient bucket that's going to let their other investments, let them live into retirement comfortably. So with that, I'm over by 2 minutes, and I apologize. I'm going to take any questions. I usually set the expectation at the beginning that I'm going to stay on here until I have at least one question. So with that, Allie, I'm going to let you open it up for questions.
Perfect. I do have one that I'm not really sure what you mean, but it says, what type of insurance do we need to market this service? Maybe if you get what that means.
So I'm assuming that it's insurance license. So most states, it's going to be a general lines, or it's going to be accident, health, life. Texas once upon a time had like license 1, license 2. Most states have consolidated. You're going to need your LTC partnership training. There's an 8-hour, there's only 4 states that have other requirements, but there's an 8-hour partnership training, and then a 4-hour refresher every 2 years. So you want to make sure that you've done the partnership training. Most states don't have an additional requirement as long as you've done the training in your home state where your resident license is, but you will need to have out-of-state licensing. Like if I were to write a contract in Arizona, my Arizona out-of-state license would apply. My training for Texas would cover the training that I need for Arizona.
That makes sense. Sorry, I didn't understand the way it was written, so that's good. The other question that popped up, once a client goes on claim, are the premiums waived?
No, we do have a flex pay option. I only mentioned the lump sum. One of the things that bewilders me is how many advisors and agents don't realize how flexible Lincoln MoneyGuard is. You can do a 1035 exchange of say $35,000 and then do a 10 pay. How we're designed is the contract has to be paid up by the age 82. If you're 55 years old, you can do a 10 pay to 65. If you're 53 years old, you can do a 13 pay. If you're 65 years old, you can do a 10 pay. So after the age of 55, it's a 10 pay or longer. To the question, is there a waiver of premium? No, how the contracts are designed, they're on a universal life chassis. You would have to make the remaining payments for it to be a paid up contract. So even though you're receiving benefits from the contract, premiums are paid until it's paid in full.
Awesome. Those are the only two questions that have popped up so far. So.
Okay, well, I appreciate the two questions. Yep. I am going to go over real quick the deadlines and then let you guys jump. But deadlines, MoneyGuard 2 is going to be sunset as of November 1st. So MoneyGuard 2 is the current contract. MoneyGuard 3 will be launching in the next few weeks. I think we're less than a month out. MoneyGuard 2 deadlines, if you have a 1035 exchange, we have a soft deadline of October 1st, just to make sure we have enough time. We are changing contracts based on the CSO 2017 requirements. So all carriers, I think there's 65 carriers that have had to launch new contracts to be compliant with the CSO tables, as well as the price-based reserve requirements that go into effect January 1st, 2020. I cannot believe I'm saying 2020. With that, MoneyGuard will have a new product rollout. I do not know the benefits, the features, pricing. What I've said to advisors, I've never seen a new model Chevy come out with a cheaper price than the year before. Sure, there will be some product features that are different, but the goal of Lincoln is to stay committed from a competitive standpoint, for us to stay a leading provider for the best benefits. Simplicity is also a core fundamental key to the new contract, as well as additional flexibility. So the final cutoff date for MoneyGuard 2 is Friday, November 1st. There are no exceptions. All contracts have to be placed by December 31st. So we're encouraging advisors to make sure the policies are delivered by December 27th, with all of the delivery requirements and payments in to lock in those contracts. Otherwise, they're going to go to MoneyGuard 3 contracts. They'll get some additional paperwork. The questions come up quite frequently on my calls. Will there be an opportunity to switch to MoneyGuard 3 if it's better? Yes. I'm encouraging advisors, get the MoneyGuard 2 applications in, get them into underwriting. Not trying to create chaos in this, but the sooner you get them in, the sooner and the quicker they'll go through the underwriting process. We've already seen a significant uptick in applications coming in. If for some reason the benefits are something better for the client on MoneyGuard 3, or the premiums look better, whatever it might be, we will have a process in place to get just a few forms signed and move the underwriting decision and remaining application details from MoneyGuard 2 to MoneyGuard 3. So again, and make sure you've got your partnership training, and please make sure that you check the date and make sure that you've done the refresher. I've had a couple of applications kick back recently where we end up having to get new applications if your partnership training for your state out of date. So any other questions for me?
I'm not seeing any others right this second, so they will potentially, oh wait, somebody just popped one in. They just popped one in.
All right.
Will give a list on this one. He said which 32 states have recovery issues. I would think we would have to email that. You're not going to list them here.
Oh, yeah. I don't have them on the top of mind, but I will get you the article and let you see it, as well as stats on wealthy clients. So I appreciate the question.
That would be great.
And yeah, Dan Smith is my internal. We are both here to help you with cases, clients. Core is also, Andy's fantastic at running these, but feel free to reach out to us for marketing support, underwriting support, pre-screening, etc. We appreciate your partnership and taking time today.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. Have a great one, everyone. Thank you for being on the call.
All right. You too. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.